Thank you very much, respected chairpersons, for that very kind introduction. At the outset, I would like to thank the entire team RSSDI for such a wonderful conference and for inviting me here to be able to deliver this talk and to be amongst all of you where we heard so many so excellent talks which definitely added to our knowledge. So I'll be speaking on time in range, role in COVID care in patients with diabetes. So basically, we heard so much about the CGMS. I'm sure all of us know it very well, but still, what is time in range? When we say time in range, it refers to the time spent in an individual's target glucose range, which usually we take it as 80 to 180 milligram per deciliter. So how much time throughout the day a person remains within this and reference range is the time in range. And usually in type 1 and type 2 diabetics, we wish to have about 16 hours and 48 minutes of time in range in 24 hours. And the the number of times or the entire time when the patient is having a value above this is the time above the range, that is TAR, that indicates the hyperglycemia, and below is the time below range, that is the hypoglycemia. Now, the time in range may be used as an appropriate endpoint in clinical research and as a measure of glycemic control in patients with diabetes. And there is emerging evidence that time in range is inversely correlated to the risk of developing micro and macrovascular complications in diabetes. So, having said that, we're talking so much about the CGMS and so much about the time in range and what are the various long-term impacts and complications. But what we are going to discuss today is not about the long-term complications, but what impact it will have on a patient who has an acute problem, like, for example, the ones which we recently had, the COVID pandemic. So whether we can translate the importance of time in range in COVID scenario, that is what we are going to look into today. So the international consensus for CGM interpretation, if we see that in type 1, type 2 diabetics, it is said that more than 70% time should be in time in range. In elderly people, it is somewhat relaxed. In pregnancy type 1 diabetics, again, we want good time in range. And in GDM and type 2 diabetes pregnancy, the time in range goes up much, much higher. A larger time should be in range. Then their time above range and time below range, the values internationally consensus they have been given, and we should know that every 5% increase in time in range is associated with clinically significant benefits for type 1 and type 2 diabetes individuals. Now, our concern is COVID-19 and diabetes. So diabetes and COVID-19, because this COVID-19 is a pandemic that swept us away with its unpredictability and so many issues and the morbidity and mortality associated with it, that we are still in the phase of understanding and formulating guidelines as to how we should manage. And this becomes very much more important considering the fact that this is not the last pandemic that we are going to have. Probably we may have more infections waiting in the wings. So we really don't know. So we have to be careful, and this infection gave us a chance to realize that what should be our attitude and our guidelines so as to combat in such a scenario. So the ACE stated that diabetes and high glucose levels are associated with increased complications, respiratory failure, and mortality in hospitalized patients with COVID-19. There were a lot of studies which said this. We have gone through so many studies which said that a poor glycemic control and diabetics had a higher chance of going in for oxygen treatment, for ICU admissions, for mortality. Then ADA says something similar but in a different way, that the risk of getting very sick from COVID-19 is lower if the diabetes is well managed. So a positive way of saying, if the diabetes is well in control, we may not get very sick if we get COVID-19. IDF says that the people with pre-existing medical comorbidities, including diabetes, they are more vulnerable to become severely ill with COVID-19. And the RSSDI says that when people with diabetes do not manage their diabetes well and experience fluctuating blood sugars, they are generally at a risk of number of diabetes-related complications. We can assume COVID-19 also to be one of them. Then looking into the pathophysiology of SARS-CoV-2 in patients with diabetes, we know that patient with diabetes has a deficient innate immune response, has a prothrombotic state, has a pro-inflammatory state, and all these contribute to a more severe infection with SARS-CoV-2. And at the same time, if we go the other way around, also the SARS-CoV-2 and the inflammation leads to insulin resistance, and it has an impact directly on the beta cells, also leading to bad beta cell function, insulin resistance, cytokine storm, increasing the insulin resistance. So basically it further aggravates the hyperglycemia, further aggravating the poor outcome. So it is a completely vicious cycle, as we can see, and a bilateral phenomenon, diabetes, SARS-CoV-2, both attacking each other and having a worse and worse outcomes. This is an important slide which shows that comorbidity of diabetes associated with diabetes severity and mortality of COVID-19. We can see very well the risk ratios are so much away from the ahead of 1. So there is a higher morbidity and mortality. So the COVID-19 pandemic has brought a new urgency, and it has brought a new urgency to realize, to make us realize that we have to deal with these situations also. And the standard which we had kept for in a hospital admitted patient as to maintaining around 140 to 180 being the standard now becomes a challenge because of the so many other conditions associated. So this is just a list of trials which were done. The Vandenberg trial is a famous trial because it showed that a very good control has a good impact on the mortality, a positive impact. But this could not be replicated, and it was found by the Nice Sugar trial, that which it's a very famous trial again, which is very much quoted, that a very intensive control in the ICUs led to higher hypoglycemias and a much worse outcome, increase in mortality. So this was an interesting article in Diabetes Care which showed that when we attempt to control the improvement in the blood glycemic control, we are improving the mean glucose, but at the same time we are risking for the hypoglycemia. And the nursing, there are so many algorithms, sometimes the nursing acceptance becomes difficult. And the last line being very important, that the finger stick glucose measurements in the ICU every hour, which is required when a patient is on IV insulin, could often be delayed for many hours, placing the patient at a risk for hypoglycemia. So this is a very important factor. So seeing that at one side we want a good glycemic control for a good outcome, at the other side there's a risk of hypoglycemia, what should we do? And here, to study the impact of a near normal glycemia in the hospital status, CGM has come as a very important answer. Now this is important because basically CGM is till date being mostly used for patients who are not admitted, in outdoor patients, but in indoor patients the scene becomes totally different. So what does the ADA have to say? It says primum non essere, means it is a Latin word which states that if you don't do anything good, it's okay, but don't do anything bad. So use insulin, it says in COVID-19, but at all costs avoid hypoglycemia, number one. Number two, what we have to see is we have to limit the healthcare worker exposure. So to test the blood glucose levels, if a healthcare worker has or a nurse has to go inside the room every hour, we are exposing that, and preserve the PPE kits, the equipment also. And all these things need to assess they point towards the requirement to assess the feasibility of CGM in the hospital setting also. So the goal is to manage the glucose remotely, more safely and effectively. So can we do this probably with CGM? So let's look into this. So there are a few studies which are done for using CGM in hospitalized patients. Nair et al., he used in hospitalized patients, this is the most post-surgical patients, he used Dexcom G6, and he found that the mean absolute relative difference marked to be 9.4%, which is acceptable. Ritragul et al. Did a very interesting study. They did in COVID-19 patients, they also used Dexcom G6, and what they did was they placed the sensor on the patient's abdomen, and the reader was on the door of the room, and then it was the results were transmitted to the app, which was downloaded remotely to the nurse's desk. So the nursing station, they were getting a continuous reports of the values of the patient. So this was and they got a MARD of 9.77%, again very acceptable. So this was a very positive study. The study by Galindo et al, they used Freestyle Libre, had a higher MARD of 14.8%, and it increased further to 28% when they looked into the hypoglycemia. This was a relatively not that acceptable range. But still, it is being improved, and with advancing technology, probably Freestyle Libre also can be considered as to be having better impact. Hypoglycemia reduction is one very important thing when we talk of any serious patient. Singh et al, they said that glucose telemetry system by CGM versus point of care testing, they found that there was definitely less hypoglycemia. Another study, Fortman et al, they also found less hypoglycemia and better glycemic levels. So now coming to this very important question about the feasibility of CGM for COVID-19 patients. So is it feasible? So Shehab Zalzman et al, what they did was they used Medtronic sensors, and they had a pilot trial which showed that the CGM data could be transferred to the remote monitoring systems, having good impact. So probably now we will have a time when we can apply the CGM to the patient, and our nursing also need not have to go and test every hourly or so frequently, get themselves exposed not only to COVID-19, probably there are so many infections coming up, they can remotely assess the glucose, they can transmit it further to the doctor, and then it can be accordingly managed. As I said, using the Dexcom system, Retrokil et al, they showed acceptance by nursing staff. This I had already discussed, that they had applied the sensor on the patient, and the receiver was at the door and then transmitted remotely on the nursing station. So this suggests that it is possible for this technology to safely manage glycemia, at the same time reducing the PPE use. So how do we move forward now? What do we have further? So basically, initial studies, which even these very few studies, and most of them, mind you, are the pilot trials still. So pilot trial is something that we say that, okay, it's a trial which is the earliest beginner trial. It's not probably really, we have to do further trials to assess and establish the results. So it's just a pilot trial. So most of them are some of them even are done, but they are all out of the ICU. Though they are out of the ICU, they are encouraging, but we need more data. As of now, no CGM is approved by the US FDA, and all need to be used as adjunctive devices in the hospital. We cannot rely alone as if we go to the approval by the US FDA. And on April 1st, 2020, the FDA noted, looking into the COVID scenario, the FDA noted that CGM could be allowed with the hope that remote continuous glucose data could reduce PPE and healthcare provider exposure. This becomes very important. So to date, these are the goals we hope are achievable, but definitive conclusions would still be premature. We need more data. We need more studies. So on the one side, the positive thing is improvement in glucose control, less exposure, less PPE utilization in patients with COVID-19. But on the other side, how to extrapolate this results to hundreds of hospitals who have so many own protocols. So what are the problems with the CGM? Is it all that good and simple? Basically, there is a lack of dedicated diabetes team familiar with the technology. So even if one is familiar and comfortable with the technology, how many of us attending this entire conference would have really been using it so frequently to be easily familiar with it and use it in the indoor serious patients, admitted serious patients? Even if we are comfortable with the technology, there is lack of standardized inpatient protocols to address both alerts and predictive alerts. So basically, I was attending a conference of ACE in the US 2 years back, and the maximum crowd I saw was in the on the session where they were talking about the treatment protocols while using the CGMs. So these protocols are something which we are not that familiar with, and there are, for the inpatient indoor patients also, we don't have these protocols so laid out so well. And to top it all, we require evidence-based protocols as to how best to advise our nursing staff. Our nursing staff should be knowing, should be educated, and should be able to use it. Again, as I just commented, that none of these studies were in the ICU patients. And because this becomes important, because in the ICU patients, moment to moment, we have so many hemodynamic changes. There are pressure, I'll just find up. It's just almost one or two slides. Pressor use and potentially interfering medications. Will this technology be helpful? So the data for this population is awaited, and this is very important. So, and what are our final glucose targets? What are our goals? What level do we wish to achieve? Would lower glucose levels without hypoglycemia benefit these hospitalized patients with or without COVID-19? We don't know, because we have seen so many contradictory levels in the past also. Now, with such infections, what should be our target? That is also yet to be decided. So it appears that we now have the technology to definitively answer the inpatient glucose hypothesis question, which is not answerable over a decade ago. The need to revisit this important question is only more urgent in the COVID-19 era. So the future of CGM in the hospital looks bright, but we are anxious for more data to be generated. Thank you.